The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
It is Thursday, January 20th, 2022. Thank you for joining us at the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. I normally like to start with just general observations about whatever is happening in my life or someone's life around me and how that is juxtaposed to all the politics that we're facing. But the place that I'm at right now is simply wondering as an individual whether or not the American people in general, whether or not we're going to appeal to and seek after the truth. I think about this in context of even the movie recently, Don't Look Up. It's a media example. It is a content, it's a piece of creative art, but it is an example of how we have a tendency as people to ignore truths that are inconvenient for us. And I just am at a stage in my life. I guess I'm getting old enough. I guess I have enough gray hairs now to not really care about anything more than the truth. Well, the truth also comes at an expense sometimes. It's not always pretty. It's not always something that is that people want to see. We discussed that a little bit this week. I want to bring my brother in, Dr. Carl Mack. I'm just riffing, Brother Mack. I know we just got some of the stories to you, and I have a list of videos here that I want us to get into. And the videos, I do believe, are going to dovetail into the conversation about whether or not we can see the truth, and whether or not we're going, and I don't mean rhetorically here. I don't mean philosophically, and I don't mean spiritually. All those things are relevant. I'm just talking about like real numbers. One of the things in the back of my mind when I first got into political commentary was how mushy people were on the subject of climate change. And I remember I was sitting on a panel one time and I said pretty boldly, Dr. Mack, I said climate change, there's an agreed consensus that climate change is being caused by human interaction, human activity, et cetera, whatever my riff was at that moment. And someone that I felt was a colleague in arms, someone I felt would appeal to the truth, kind of genuflected in that moment and said, well, the jury's still out. And I'm like, wait a minute. Brother Mack, is there objective truth that we can look at? And maybe we need to take the term truth off of it, because maybe it's just raw numbers. Because at the end of the day, I don't care what people believe is true on some of these critical issues that we're facing today, COVID-19. The numbers tell us that we should behave in a certain way, but the reality of the people around us suggests that they simply don't want to recognize the truth when they hear it. I know that's a pretty big jump off in the morning, but I know you can handle that. This is nothing for you.
Well, good morning, Brother Ben. And a couple of quotes come to mind. First of all, when it comes to the data, the quote that comes to mind by the great poet laureate Jay-Z, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie.
That's right? It.
And then the other one from a historical perspective is, it is a truism of history that people react on what they think has happened rather than what actually happened. And so I think those two quotes kind of sum up exactly what we're talking about. It's one thing if a person wants to stand on an opinion, and usually I try to stay away from subjectivity and I like to be objective, which is, I think, is exactly what you're talking about. And when you take a look at science, and the thing that is so incredible about the advances in technology is that it follows certain laws. And when something is a law, that means that no matter how many times you work that formula, you're always going to get that exact answer. And so a lot of the advances that we've had in society is based on scientific laws. And you get those laws through trial and error. And then ultimately, you have folks who come up, mathematicians who come up with a law. So in the case of something like COVID-19, you cannot dispute that the majority of people, the overwhelming majority of people who have died from COVID were people who either were not vaccinated or, in the case of being vaccinated, still had underlying conditions. Yeah. So those types of things, climate change, especially when you speak to older people, or even if we harken back to our own childhood, the types of weather patterns that we're seeing now cannot just be explained away as just a general occurrence, especially when you take a look at, okay, what is it that protects the Earth? Well, there's a layer called the ozone layer. Then what helps deplete the ozone layer? Carbon monoxide. Okay, well, if carbon monoxide can deplete the ozone layer, and now we're taking fossil fuels and burning those fuels through cars and everything else that we use that creates this, and that's going up into the atmosphere, doesn't it stand to reason that that amount of carbon monoxide is going to deplete, thin out the ozone layer, and now we begin to see these climate change conditions? When you look at polar caps and they're melting at a tremendous rate, when man is becoming more and more active, thus creating more carbon monoxide. I mean, Brother Ben, it just doesn't take a whole lot of education to kind of understand that explanation. Now, can you have glimpses throughout time where things hot, climate changes in certain regions? Yeah, I get that. But we're talking about an increased number of hurricanes. We're talking about an increased number of wildfires. We're talking about depletion of polar caps. We're seeing things that are happening that could, for the most reasonable, can only be explained as this climate is, and as scientists are measuring the temperature of the Earth and seeing this place warm up, this place we call Earth warm up, it just stands to reason. But, for those who won't, and I've always said, reason can't argue with stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, at the end of the day, you especially when there's so many people who have a financially vested interest in ignoring the science. And here, not only ignoring the science, they have enough money to create their own alternative science. And this is how we see the operations of the Republican Party, the conservative movement, and then there are some Democrats, but I'll get to them later on in this show.
Ben, let me just interject one thing, and I want you to keep that thought. So when you say people that have enough money, sometimes people just want to overlook that and say, oh, there they go blaming the wealthy again. Well, let us give you just two examples of that. How long do you think Philip Morris knew that tobacco caused cancer, smoking caused lung cancer? And they fought vehemently because they had the money to do that. Take a look at the oil industry. The oil industry knows that fossil fuel is putting out the carbon monoxide, but they know that is their bread and butter. So they are going to fight the coal industry. They're going to fight with all due diligence to say, forget the technology that we know will do better to help save this planet. But for right now, that lines our pockets. So those are just two examples. But Ben, go ahead.
I think those are that's actually thank you for that interjection, because that actually pushes me a little bit further in the conversation. Because then now you see they have enough money to sponsor their own quote unquote science. And so while there may not be a 100% consensus, we actually have to look at the motivation of that 3% of scientists who ignore or find some loose justification to ignore the things that we need to change to save this planet. And I know I'm building that out kind of big and broad. I know that's kind of a large concept for a lot of people to handle. Maybe, I hope not. But I need people to understand that so long as our, I don't want to call them the competition. I don't want to call them competition. Our rivals, our political rivals, those who oppose justice. There it is. So long as those who oppose justice have a thread, Brother Mac, to cling to support their ideology, which is built on lies. So long as they have one study, it doesn't matter if every other scientist on the face of the planet is saying that men are causing climate change and we have to do something about it. No, it doesn't matter. So long as they have one study. And of course, there are institutions, there are companies with bank accounts large enough to create those studies. This is a practice that has been happening through corporate America since long before I was born. But we see it right now with the examples that you gave, Brother Matt.
And Ben, let me interject another example of exactly what you're talking about so that people can understand this. Let's say that you have a case of police misconduct. How many times have we seen when Eric Garner was killed, when Tamir Rice was killed. Now media brings on, the right-wing media will bring on their so-called police experts to justify why that cop did what you and I know a person of reason, a person who is there for service, a person who values lives would not have acted in that situation. But then they bring their experts on, as you say, you got these big foundations who can create these studies in the face of anything and everything that makes sense to the majority of us, and now bring it on. Another example, January 6th.
That's it.
Even though Trump -45 talked about election being stolen, mishandling of ballots, even in Republican states where you had Republican state attorney generals, when they said, look, we've taken a look at Georgia, your state. Let's just talk about, and again, for people who may not think that what you were saying, Brother Dixon, they can't quite follow it. When he's talking about people who can create a study in the face of what everybody else has said, the state of Georgia in the last national election is a prime example. So who controls the election process in the state of Georgia?
The Secretary of State.
Republican or Democrat?
I can't pronounce that man. It's like Roethlisberger, whatever his last name is. Yeah.
Republican or Democrat?
Republican.
Okay. So now you got all the hands controlling the process.
That's right.
Of counting the ballots, controlling the election process of what party?
The Republican Party. Through and through.
But yet, -45 and the Republicans want to start painting this picture that the election process was stolen. Now, they were talking about counting the ballots in Arizona. And remember, they found their expert to go down who says he's got this foolproof way of counting the ballots. He got paid a crap load of money. But what was his final findings about the ballots in the state in Arizona? And I think it was one particular county, Ben. I cannot recall the county. But the last I know is that there is not one shred of evidence where they have shown an overwhelming number of ballots being mishandled that would have caused -45 to lose the election. But even though they brought in their experts and painted this, as Dr. King said yesterday, the purpose of education is to stop man from the morass of propaganda. So because these people muddied up the water and tried to make a very simple situation complex, and they used propaganda, and now begin to push that out to the masses where they fed that. And that's what led to this day that we've come to be known throughout history as Insurrection Day, January 6th.
That's it. And I think now I've taken the long way around, and you and I have taken the long way around to give kind of the definition, or at least the insidiousness and the seriousness of the big lie. Right?
Yes.
Because the big lie is that one single thread of absurdity that is given to all of the Make America Great Again MAGAs, that all they need is for their leader, Donald Trump, to just say it. All the evidence be damned. So long as Trump says it, his followers will follow him all the way up the steps on Insurrection Day. Brother Mac, the problem is that the big lie transcends just politics, right?
Yeah.
And we see it now. We see it infecting COVID-19, so to speak, no pun intended, right? Where now the absurdity is right in front of us. Mm-hmm. I cannot take for the life of me, I cannot understand how people can look at all of the death around us and still be out here with all of the gains as it pertains to getting the vaccine, social distancing, putting a mask on your funky COVID face. I mean, and then there's a correlation, Brother Mac, and I'm going to give it to you because there's a correlation between the political party and their approach to COVID-19. There's a correlation between how many people are dying and your political affiliation. There's a statistically significant difference in the number of Republicans who are dying from COVID-19. Isn't that an absurd notion that your politics leads you to death?
Well, Ben, again, the beautiful thing I like is when Dr. King said that the purpose of education is to save man from the morass of propaganda. Now, I know that could be a lot. So I literally looked up the definition of propaganda. And here's the definition of propaganda. Is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. And that's exactly what you just talking about. You taking something that can deal with life or death and you politicize it. Now, in the case of President Biden wants to mandate vaccinations, at least for government officials, and I don't know how far else it goes. But now for the Supreme Court to come in and say, no, somewhere you're trampling on people's rights. Well, fam, if this pandemic gets so far out of control, we're not going to have the least thing we're going to have to worry about is people's rights because everybody's dead. Now,
come on, man.
That may seem absurd to many, but that's what takes us back to the movie that we were talking about earlier, Don't Look Up. See, here comes an asteroid, something that is detrimental to civilization itself. And I don't want to paint the picture as though it is that big of doom and gloom, but the possibility exists. Now, who would have ever thought in our lifetime, Ben, that we would have saw a virus come out like this and take over 900,000 American lives in a year?
Come on.
That's what we've seen.
That's the absurdity.
So now the Supreme Court, instead of saying, look, I understand people's rights, but we're dealing with a force of nature unlike anything many of us have seen in our lifetime. And these extenuating circumstances, this extenuating virus requires some extenuating actions. Now, they could have made it temporary. They could have given executive powers there to be reviewed. It could have done anything, but to all of a sudden say, no, it's okay. You can't infringe on people's rights here. Well, we've been doing that the whole time. You telling me I need a license to drive. You telling me that I needed a vaccination when I was a child to go to school. There were times when you called that out. And now it has become so politicized that we are willing to risk lives over power. And the thing that is amazing, Ben, is that the people that they're able to lead down these paths, they don't give a damn about them. All they care about is playing to a base, getting them stirred up, and staying in power. And the thing that makes it so relevant, so easy on this other side is when you have this belief in racism somewhere inside of you that you believe that you're better than, greater than, it is easy for you to push that. It is easy for you to push agendas like that.
Yeah. Brother Mac, coming up at the half-hour mark, Georgia Ford is going to be joining us to discuss the students in St. Paul, Minnesota, who walked out of school on behalf of their own health because their parents, or rather the school leadership, wasn't doing their job. The students took it into their own hands to defend themselves as it pertains to COVID-19. We'll be talking about that momentarily with Georgia Ford on the clock. And then coming up at 9 o'clock at the top of the hour, we'll be speaking with Cliff Albright, along with the rest of the crew from Like It or Not, Rebecca Azor and DJ Exclusive. Cliff Albright, of course, is from Black Voters Matter. And what's ironic about this, Brother Mac, is the level of absurdity that is required. And I got to get these videos in because it all stems from ignoring truth. When you ignore truth, you have to substitute it with something else. Go ahead, Brother Mac.
As a point of personal privilege here, we're talking about truth. So yesterday we were on the show, and if you don't mind, I'd like to just take this opportunity. And I want to speak directly to Senator Jones of Florida. So in Senator Jones' actions of trying to Chevron
Jones,
Chevron
state
Jones.
Senator from Florida. Yes, sir.
Yes. And so Senator Jones, we showed a clip of Senator Jones speaking passionately about CRT and saying it doesn't matter if you make people uncomfortable. And so one of the things that he and I had talked about on this show earlier was the need, because he stressed the need for us to get things right. And so one of the things we talked about on this other show, and I challenged him on Florida making Juneteenth their state paid holiday versus May 20th, because there is a contingent of Black folks in there who want that history made right. And so yesterday, after he left the show, I took the approach, and it was based on me not having all the facts, that Florida had indeed made June 19th a state paid holiday. And so I poured salt on Senator Jones. Senator Jones, I poured salt on you. I didn't pour it when you were there, and I poured it after you left, which was a punk move as well. So I want to say to you, my brother, in finding this truth, because when I got off the phone, I called Commissioner Cox, and Commissioner Cox said this to me. She said, Brother Mack, I do want to tell you that Senator Jones is one of the few who is listening to us, and he appears to be an ally with us. And so, Senator Jones, I want to humbly say, in finding that truth, I want to apologize for any salt that I poured onto you. You appear to be a very stand-up brother in trying to make this truth right. You appear to be very consistent and not only in saying to white folks to get our history right, but in you as a black man getting our history right. And I should have had all of those facts before I poured that salt, regardless if it was a grain of salt or a bucket of salt. I shouldn't have poured salt like that. And I want to say to you, my brother, in seeking that truth yesterday, because it sat on my conscience, not only did it sit on my conscience, but your very good friend, Ben Dixon, challenged me to the nth degree about it. And he was very right. And I found that truth. And I want to say to you, I'm very sorry. I apologize. And I thank you so much for what you are trying to do in bringing our truth to fruition. Thank you, Ben.
What? You're going to make me pay a fine here. Damn, Brother Mac. That's why I rock with you, man. Not everybody can do that. And not everyone can do it on such a big, large platform. But honestly, the reason I knew I could pitch that question to you at the top of the show, and I knew that we had not even touched this subject at all, was because I know one thing about you is that you follow the truth even when it's inconvenient. You follow the truth even when it's inconvenient. And I think that was a great example of that. So bless you, brother. We appreciate that.
It's called doing the right thing, Ben. It's called doing the right thing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Much respect. Much respect. Now, let's look at some people doing the wrong thing with the last 8 minutes that we have here. I want to take a look at the absurdity. I want to dovetail at least one of these clips, David. And if you want to tell us which one is the best example of the absurdity that is required. Once you start ignoring the truth, once you start going down the road of ignoring data, and start appealing to whatever you want to become your justification, you kind of get a little bit absurd. You really get out on the ledge of stupidity to the point of, like, Brother Mac, they're dying. That's one thing. Yeah, but some of these people are going to the point of their own sense. I just can't even describe it. Dwayne, whatever clip David says play.
I'd play the first two. All three are ridiculous.
Let's run through them. I don't even have to give a lot of commentary. This is how absurd you get when you start ignoring actual tangible data and facts. Let's run it.
And they're sneaking around like this, hunting your arm. Oh yeah, thinking they're going, oh yeah, we've got this for your own good. No, stick it in ours, but we'll put it in yours. No. And we start to call the effects in that thing null and void. Right. We start to call it right now of no potency whatsoever. It loses its strength, and there's such an overwhelming wave of health that's coming through America and the nations of the world because of you praying, because of God's people praying. We call for such an overwhelming tsunami wave of healing and health that everything within that little thing they're trying to stick in your they're trying to come around and find your arm. Show me your flesh. Forget the flesh, Jack. I'm in the spirit. And in the name of Jesus, I call that serum null and void.
Brother Mac, I want to get through as many as we can. We have about 6 minutes here. That is Robin Bullock, a self-proclaimed prophet. He's talking about the vaccine. I don't know if everyone put it together. His name is not important. What is important is that this man is platformed, and he's not by himself. There is a message going out that is anti-science, that is getting millions of people killed across this globe, hundreds of thousands in this country. And in our churches, you have this level of absurdity being preached against the vaccine to the point of this ridiculousness. It is a dangerous threat, but I also see it as a natural extension of what happens when you start ignoring the truth in the beginning.
I'll be very brief, Brother Bennett. We can go to the next clip. As a Sunday school dropout, I believe the word says, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing.
Well, it gets even worse. Stella Emanuel, who we know around this show, she is the doctor who is a quote unquote frontline doctor. I want you to understand the trickery. When you hear them say frontline doctor, it makes you think that they're on the front line. No. Frontline Doctors is a corporation, a business named Frontline Doctors. This is who she was or is affiliated with. And she's also, Brother Mac, I lie not to you, she's also the demon sperm lady. Now, I feel bad about putting our sister here. She's of African descent, putting her on blast, but everyone's skin to us and kin to us. Listen to the absurdity of Dr. Stella Emanuel of the quote unquote Frontline Doctors trademark.
Every time we've prayed for people that have taken the vaccine, because it's Luciferian, at the mention of the name of Jesus, every knee bows. We have been able to cast this thing out of people. Each time we pray for people that have taken the vax, there's a reaction, a needle poke, the hand starts shaking, and we cast this stuff out of people. If it is the devil, it got to come out at the mention of the name of Jesus. So the important thing is to repent. When you repent and you say you're sorry, God is able to forgive you, cleanse you, and regenerate you.
Brother Mac, I know you're a Sunday school dropout. I am a pastoral dropout, but I am not repenting for taking the vaccine. In fact, I got the booster shot and it feels pretty good to me. What say ye? And then we got one more clip.
Okay, Ben, I'll be quick. It reminds me of the joke, when the guy stood on his roof and the flood came and 3 boats came by and he said, no, God's going to save me. And then finally he drowns. He goes up, says, God, I thought you was going to save me. And God said, look, man, I sent 3 boats for you. Right. So
I sent 3 shots.
In this case, the vaccine came. Let's say all of that worked through God, that God sent the vaccine to help preserve man, and man decided I'm not going to take it. So when that sister goes to heaven and she says, God, I was a faithful servant. I prayed to you that you would handle this. He says, sister, I did. I gave you a vaccine. You refused to take it.
Yeah, no. And so when you ignore, this is all to me an extension of ignoring tangible data. Like I have I just want to put this out here because I got my start obviously in faith and religion, and I got my start in politics with the book, God Is Not a Republican. So this is kind of my wheelhouse, right? And there's a lot of people who are new to the show who don't really understand, like, that's my briar patch. Please throw me in there. But as it regards to this conversation, this is the threat that we are facing, because when you ignore science, I have no requirement to reject science for my own personal faith. That's a whole different conversation. But when you ignore it, you end up on the pursuit of the absurd, the conspiracy theory, the ridiculous. You take your faith to a place where now, you are dying. They are dying. These conservative radio hosts, like, there are so many job openings because of how many Republicans are dying because of this pandemic. And yet, Brother Mac, they're still ignoring it, and they're doubling down with the conspiracies. Take a listen to this QAnon conspiracy theorist, Scott McKay. He's also known as the Patriot Street Fighter, declaring war not on Democrats, not on Black Lives Matter, but the absurdity has gone here. He's declaring war on healthcare workers. Take a listen in.
My next target, knowingly or unknowingly on their behalf, any of these doctors or nurses around the country that are involved in the murder of our people, they're going to be spotlighted. As you know, I'm dragging them out in the open. We're going to spotlight them, show them to the whole world. I'm going to be named them by names. If you have the courage to kill our people, you better have the courage to stand in the direct crosshairs of Patriot Street Fighter, because this is now going to happen. There's no playing nice in this war because this is World War IV. World War III was the Cold War. World War IV has been underway for decades. The elite powers in this world have decided to come after all of us and eliminate us from the planet. And I don't mean maybe, it should be becoming apparent to people in this day and age that they have created a global matrix system to kill us, to help us murder ourselves through chemtrails, through the corporate food industry, from big pharma, from the influence of the big media. This is all built not for your benefit or commerce. It's built to create a commerce machine that they can keep you working, to keep that matrix running, taking the money and profit from it, from you, even the stores you buy in, to use that money to try to kill you. This is where we are.
Brother
Ben, there's a couple of things. One is, do you know what the word con man comes from? It comes from the word confident. Clearly he stands up there with a lot of confidence, and that's what makes a con man so effective. It's the confidence that they give in spreading what they spread. Now, my final statement in regards to why this is so effective via religious, via one's religion. I inherently want to believe that the people who consider themselves spiritual in nature truly want to believe and truly believe that God is all powerful. And it is that belief that God is all powerful which allows the confident man or woman to come up there and say, in the face of all science, we don't need science. We got Jesus. Jesus is our truth. I am not one who does not believe that Jesus is all knowing and all powerful. God is all knowing. The Trinity is all knowing and all powerful. But I also believe, as the good book said, that God made us in his image. And so if we can come up with a cure, how many people through medicine has saved lives? Because you have this belief in Jesus, it is so easy in your spirituality. It is so easy for the confident man or woman to come in there and take you away from that. Not only take you away from common sense, but take you away from your money. In the case of some of those.
And Brother Mac, take you away from your life. These people, I got to ask all these pastors. We're going to go to a break. We're going to toss it to the DJ exclusive, and we'll pick this up on the clock. But I want to ask some of these pastors, how many funerals have you presided? How many COVID-19 funerals have you presided over while you're over there telling everybody Jesus is going to protect them and they don't need the vaccine? DJ exclusive. Let's take it to a break. When we come back, we'll be on the clock with Georgia Ford.
All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Friend me, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Friend me, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me.
Good morning, people. Y'all know who it is. Y'all know the voice. Y'all know the sound. It's your boy DJ James Williams is in the building, man. Good morning, everybody. Make sure that you stay tuned. We got more coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. On the Clock with Georgia Fort is coming up next, followed by Like It or Not with Rebecca Ozone. Good morning, Rebecca. Good morning, everybody. Y'all stay tuned. Good morning.
Trying to get it worldwide, global. Looking like a show. You be killing this is Spiller, the whole man killer. Life so free, can't no man kill him. Came from the bottom, was a broke man girl. Still move like Tim Man with no found with them. Boom. Pardon me, I get hectic. I survive through the wreckage. Should go look for the exit. New sheriff in town, I get a little reckless. Mr. Memo, go check the message. I ate then came back for seconds. I hate seeing your fake little necklace. Lifestyle decrepit, I should probably expect this. Too much game for your league. I'm saying was ego, saying no beats.
Better, Dwayne.
Aim to be, I'm insane and free. You can't tame the beast. Friend me, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. Friend me, enemy. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck just wanna be a mini me. All these neck.
Good morning, everybody. Nat A is in the building. Good morning, Nat. We feel like we haven't seen you in so many, since like last year.
Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. When you need someone to cover a story accurately, when you need someone who understands how to seize the narrative, when you need someone who's going to be on the streets when action is happening, you need Georgia Ford. We're on the clock with my sister, Georgia Ford.
Thousands of students walked out of school earlier this week, and it's all in light of the surging amount of new COVID cases. This happened in the city of St. Paul district-wide. High school students and even some middle school students walked out around the lunch hour demanding administration and the school board do something about it. What they're asking that they switch to virtual learning immediately. We heard from some students saying that they're concerned about parents who have who are immune compromised. They have siblings who are immune compromised. And every day the city is forcing them to go to school. And then in turn, they come home putting their family at risk. Ben, I attended at least one of these walkouts earlier this week and was just amazed at how well-versed these students were, how clear they were about what they wanted, and the fact that they were able to articulate that this isn't only compromising their parents' health or their siblings' health, but they talked about the mental health implications that it's had on them as well to have to be the responsible one in the situation and say, hey, yes, something is not right with the decision that you guys have made for us. And it's a decision that definitely affects them, but one that they shouldn't have to be worried about.
Right. Good morning, Sister Ford. I think of that context exactly. Like, what is it? What is it to be a teenager who has to organize in their school to protect their own lives from the people who are responsible for protecting them? What do you do when the people who are charged with protecting you, this system, these schools, this entire apparatus, has decided to just throw our children to the wolves? And I'm so proud to see what they did there in St. Paul. They're standing up for themselves.
Absolutely. And Brother Mac, I know we talked about this extensively before kids went back to school. Even all of us as parents having our own dilemmas of whether or not we should be sending our kids back. To see this mass demonstration, this mass walkout, it, shows me that we have a generation that is paying attention, that is aware of what's happening, and is not just going to listen to a system that's telling it to do something when those orders contradict with what they know is the right thing to do.
And good morning, Sister Ford. And again, thank you for a wonderful story. And this is happening in Minneapolis?
This is happening in St. Paul, which is the capital city in Minnesota.
Okay. And so one of the things, that I loved about the footage is that, I'll be very frank with you, is that when we first started talking about the story, I'm thinking that when we show the video footage, we're going to show all these white kids, right? And instead, that video footage showed African-American children making a decision that says, look, we're not going to let you politicize this situation, because again, for all the reasons that they want to protest and say, let's move back to in-home learning, all of those reasons. And as you say, when you go out and talk to them, so well-versed. And so when I saw these African-American children in the forefront of just good common sense in the face of, quote, leadership that is stuck on stupid, it harkened me back to May 2nd through 5th, 1963, Birmingham. there was an event called the Children's Crusade, and most of us remember Birmingham and what happened with Dr. King, but it was the children who rallied together and brought that city to a halt and led the fight in civil rights. And so that's very much what this is reminiscent of. But not only is it happening in St. Paul, it's happening in Boston, it's happening in Chicago, it's happening in cities across this country, that children are showing far more sense and far more concern for humanity than these so-called political leaders who are purely trying to politicize this situation.
Yeah, I mean, these students, they talked about their concern even for their teachers, bus drivers, the fact that some of their favorite educators have had to be out either for themselves or for their own children. And so to continue to hoard all of these bodies into a condensed area with, you know, poor or little ventilation, what do you think is going to happen?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're talking about thousands, in some school, thousands of kids in a building. I mean, it's the recipe for disaster, you know, and so it's not surprising that we're seeing an influx of teachers who are getting COVID, or they're sending their kids to school who are coming back with COVID. Bus drivers are out. I mean, if you don't have the bare essentials to run a school, then why are you trying to run a school?
That's right.
If you know, and so I think what the determination ended up being is like 25% of teachers being out or 25% of staff being out, then they'll switch over to virtual learning. But by that point, if 25% of your teachers is out, think about what that means. That means then a quarter of your student body has been exposed to COVID. Right. Why would you know, we're being reactionary. We're saying, oh, if there's an outbreak and a large enough amount of people get sick, then we'll go to virtual learning. Why wouldn't you prevent 25% of your student body and your staff from getting it?
And Georgia, the other thing that I think we need to remember too is, in the case of Omicron being far more contagious than the other variants, the mask that most of us have been wearing, from what I understand, is not as protective against Omicron as the others. That's number one. Number two, I never leave. I rarely, if ever, leave my compound. I rarely, if ever, leave it. I got to admit to you both, to all of us that are listening, I am most afraid that I would contract COVID because of my son going to school and now coming back. And again, the last I talked with him when we had the discussion on this, is he talked about the overwhelming number of students who are out of class because of COVID. So for me right now, I will tell you that I'm most fearful of getting COVID from my son. And not that he's not social distancing, not that he's not wearing his mask, but because he's in that environment that you so aptly described, Georgia.
That's right. That's right. And Sister Ford, I mean, and so that dovetails right back to what you were saying in terms of the mental health of the students themselves, because what does that do? Like, these kids understand what's going on. They pay attention. They have access to information. They understand how to source. We're talking about a generation that grew up with the internet. Right. Yes. And so these are kids who have now been taught you have to source your information. They understand how to do proper research. That is my hope. And I believe that that's a good assertion. That's how they find out what they need to know for themselves. And this is how we have to respect these kids' decisions, because they understand the risk that they are putting their families under. And can you imagine the emotional stress that they go through feeling responsible for bringing a virus to their parents?
And Ben, that's the point that I wanted to make, is just try to imagine that a child is responsible for bringing that virus home and it leads to something catastrophic. Just try to imagine what that child now has to live with for the rest of their lives.
For the rest of their lives. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they also demanded those N95 masks. Clearly, we know with a large number of students being on reduced lunch, some families can't afford those masks. And so they go in there with, a cloth mask that hopefully they're washing every day. But as you pointed out, those aren't as effective. So the students are saying, also, if you're going to demand us be here, then give us PPE.
Absolutely.
So it's inspiring, however, I will say, to see these young folks stand up for what they know is the right thing to protect not only themselves and their mental health, but that of their family. And so I had a chance to speak to many of the kids earlier this week. My high school I graduated from, those students there participated in a walkout as well. Just about every major high school in this school district stood up and said, we should be doing virtual learning. To wrap this up, the other side of that, there were some students who openly talked about the fact that some of the students don't perform well if they switch to virtual learning. And so they were offering different suggestions to school administrators and the school board to say, if we do switch to virtual learning, here are some things we think that we could implement so that some of our student body doesn't fall behind. And so I think the thing I was most impressed about was that they had this well-rounded presentation and list of demands, that they were being very thoughtful and they thought about the good and the bad of every decision that they were proposing.
Sister Ford, I'm so long as we don't destroy this place before our kids get in charge, I do feel that our kids are going to be all right because they have a sober eye about what we like to think our kids don't see us. And I'm really talking about all of us. I'm talking about America. Like our youth, they do see us. They do see the absurdity. They see the ridiculousness. They see, they see how much we're ignoring the climate science. They see how much we're ignoring COVID-19 data. They see how vulnerable we have made them in this moment. And I think that's the inflection point for them. I think they're now standing up and saying, if the adults won't do it, we'll do it ourselves.
And the other thing that they see is they see how we're ignoring true history through CRT and giving this whitewash history. They see what is happening. They saw what happened on January 6th. They now see what is happening with voter suppression. As you say, they're seeing a lot of things. Go ahead.
And I was going to add, I think that they also, saw our community stand up against police brutality after George Floyd. And I think that equipped them with the tool that they needed to be able to walk out of this school.
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh, I thought for a second that I lost my signal, but no, absolutely the case. Brother Mac, you actually dovetail CRT into this. And one other thing that they see before we get ready to move past this thought, they also see that there's a level of leadership here in this country that doesn't even respect our right to vote. Our kids are not blind to all of the machinations that are happening around them, and they have enough ability to research and survive the internet to not get caught into some ridiculous conspiracy theory when the data is showing them that what's happening around us is absurd enough.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Ben, I know that you are also tracking a story this morning as well.
Well, yeah, I think, I kind of jumped into it already. The absurdity of what's happening around the Voting Rights Act, our voting rights in this country, the gutting of the Voting Rights Act and all the subsequent actions of secretaries of states around the country. We have a couple of clips from the senators from my state of Georgia, from Senator John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, as they discuss what's happening and how the filibuster and how the games are being played to keep us from our most fundamental democratic right, and that is the right to vote. Let's take a listen into the first clip.
But I speak for the state of Georgia when I say do not invoke Congressman Lewis' name to signal your virtue while you work to erode his legacy and defy his will. I've heard a lot from our Republican colleagues about the recently passed election law in the state of Georgia. Let's be very clear. There is no one in Georgia on either side of the aisle who doubts or does not understand precisely what its purpose is. Forbidding voter registration for runoff elections. Driving down the early vote period during decisive runoffs to drive up lines at majority black precincts. As he used to say, John Lewis didn't give a little blood on that bridge that day so that black Georgians would have to wait 8 times longer to vote than white Georgians.
And that's the game that's afoot. It is not the same exact precise game. It is, they're going to make it extremely difficult, or they're going to purge you, or they're going to whatever machinations they have set into play across this country, particularly in Georgia, they are headlong into it. And the problem is, as we saw last night, the Senate is incapable of protecting these rights because they refuse to do anything with the filibuster, and because the Republican Party is voting as a bloc completely against the John Lewis Voting Act. Our ability, I don't even want to put a name on it. They are voting against our fundamental right to vote. That is what the Republicans are doing. And then, of course, we have the 2 Democrats that are culpable joining with those Republicans. It is the same game, but it is an absurd one because it is striking at the core of our democracy, Sister Ford.
Yeah, well, and if they don't do that and they can't convince you to vote for them, then they lose. And so if they know that they can't influence voters to vote in their favor, then they're going to use the tactics and tools historically that have been used even to manipulate outcomes. And so we shouldn't be surprised. And matter of fact, if these same people who blocked, our right to vote, if they would implement CRT, maybe we could learn more about the filibuster and how historically it's been used in similar ways.
That's right.
You know, these occurrences are not new. Maybe people who don't follow politics, who are unaware, might not see the reoccurring theme here. But even in the civil rights movement, if you go and you dig into Martin Luther King's archive, he actively was speaking out against the filibuster back then. And it was being used back then to produce similar outcomes. So every time that this country has seen an advancement for Black people, that advancement has been followed by some kind of implementation of systematic oppression. Something in the system, a loophole, a written clause somewhere in a contract. When you look at the deeds for homes, redlining.
That's right.
Every time there's been, we'll give you equal housing, but when you look at the deeds, was it really equal housing? You know, and it's the same thing. We'll give you the right to vote, but, you know, we're going to suppress your vote. So at every turn in this country, at every time that we've had the advancement of Black people, it's been followed by things like this. So we shouldn't be surprised, but it saddens me that we have a body of people in this nation who are actively working to ensure that we do not have equal access to vote or many other basic amenities or basic privileges that are supposed to come with our citizenship.
Brother Mac, I want to toss it to you, but Sister Ford, that's it. Like the Venn diagram of the people who are trying to keep us from voting probably has about a 99% overlap with the same people who are ignoring or exacerbating the situation around COVID-19. It has probably 100% overlap with the people who are ignoring the climate data. It is the same pattern over and over. It's the same people who will look at George Floyd being murdered by Derek Chauvin and find a way to justify it. It is a level of absurdity that goes through and through our politics, but the culprits are all the same.
That's right.
Brother Ben and Sister Georgia, when we talk about voter suppression, I just want to simplify it, if you will. Why would one need to change voting procedures? Well, let's assume that the legislative body was all white and the country isn't all white. There'd be a need to make a change. Let's say the legislative body was all black, all male, all women, all anything. See, that would create a need to want to change things. Let's assume that the election process is very flawed, where ballots are not being counted, dead folks are voting. If you have incredible data that shows these types of flaws in your process, it should be changed. In this case, 50, or let's say that you showing, in this case in 2018, I want to say that the percentage of Americans that voted was 50%. So being to your point that this is our most fundamental American right, is that of voting, you would think that the legislative process would want to try to encourage as many people to vote as possible and to have the most diverse representation in the halls of the policy-making positions in this country that represents your community. Of course, if you are in an all-black community, it doesn't make sense that all of a sudden this white man has got to be the one that's making policy for us. He doesn't live in our community. He ain't one of us. He don't understand us. Now, if we as black folks took this one white man who lived in our community and decided, yes, we like this brother, we're going to put him in office, that's one thing. But in a case where he does not or she does not live in our community, and now you're able to redistrict. So when we talk about the methodologies and the things that they use, redistricting is one. So you just imagine that this is the all-black community, and now they come in and draw a line that begins to fracture it and segment it such that now all of our people in our community, when we vote, our votes are fractured and splintered, so it allows somebody else to come in. So these are the types of policy. In my mother's day and time, I ran away because I wanted to go get a poll tax card. I wanted to go get my mother's poll tax card. And in 1965, my mother paid $2 to vote. I have her poll tax card. Trust and believe. If only 50% of Americans are voting today, and if you charge a quarter, that number is going to drop dramatically. So these are the type of tactics that they're using. And I love what the representative said. He said, look, first of all, let's not kid anybody. Everybody on both sides of the aisle know exactly why we are doing this. Because when that state of Georgia flipped from red to blue, they began to understand exactly, Sister Ford, as you stated, what Dr. King talked about in regards to the power of this vote. Mm-hmm. And now they need to do whatever they can in their power to make sure that they minimize it. That is the only rationale behind it. That's right. But in the case of the concept of democracy, these folks are at their very best, quintessentially hypocritical.
Yeah. Yeah. Sister Ford, we have two other clips of the Senator Raphael Warnock from Georgia, but we're going to go to a break. We're going to be joined by Cliff Albright of Black Voters Matter. This conversation, we need to expand it because this is a clear and present threat to our democracy. And so we have a lot more to discuss about this, but we're going to discuss it on the other side of the break. Sister Ford.
Time goes by and yet I wonder, are you and me still the same? Are you still loving the
Good morning again, everybody. Make sure that y'all stay tuned. We got more coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show, y'all. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned.
I don't know.
All right, I'm good to go. All right, make sure that y'all stay tuned. We got more coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. Not is coming up next with Rebecca Lazor, and we'll be joined by Cliff Albright this morning, y'all. Good morning, everybody.
And I repeat it in my head, set your mind free, set your mind free. No one knows what I've been through, but this is the end of me and you. Set your mind free.
saying St. Paul, Minnesota, man. That was a big up thing to do, a stand-up thing to do, man. The kids got more sense than the damn adults. Don't make no sense right there, boy. But this is our future. At least they got some damn sense to know to get their ass out the classroom. I appreciate that. And us as adults, we're going to do the thing to make sure that they graduate and get the shit that they need, too, god dang it.
So I stay here and hold my heart when you
Courtney, that selfie did, didn't it? The pioneer, this is Gloria Tales.
Set your mind free. Set your mind free.
Pablo, good morning to you.
But this is the end of me and you.
Brother Chuck Diesel Lateef, don't y'all be breaking nothing dancing now, okay? I just read the most funniest crap in the chat room from somebody named Bruce B. And I'm thinking, and I'm assuming the comment was he was a good president. Y'all, he was talking about Donald Trump. Woo, Bruce B. This is not the place, brother. You better get the hell on somewhere. But that was freaking hilarious, though. I needed that laugh. Shout out to Bruce B. Stupid. Oh, man. Oh, real quick, y'all. A couple of things before we get started here. I asked my wife last night if I'm the only one she been with. And the response I got, she said, yeah, all the others was 9 and 10s. I'm about to call her out her name. I'm like, well, you mother sucker. Damn it, I know I'm a 9. A strong 8 at least. Damn. Everybody can't be Dr. Mac out here. Damn, okay?
But I'm breaking my habit 'cause you turn me on.
Y'all make sure that y'all stay tuned, man. We got more coming up today.
Trying to let you know.
Y'all, if y'all can hear Dr. Mac in the background is dying back here.
I need to show you right now. Take a look at me now. I can't explain what it's like what you did.
Latino Mafune, good morning.
Set me free, you believe in me. Now you're here with me, and we're walking on cloud now. Wide awake and standing, take it to celebrate when my heart is discovered. Set me free, you believe in me. Now you're here with me, and we're
Okay, Brittany, I see you, Brittany. You better say Bubba's a 10. Bubba is a 10. Hey, a 10. Bubba is a 10. Hey, a 10. E. Smith, good morning to you. Goku, what's going on, Goku? Starshine. Yeah, I'm an 11. Y'all can't tell me nothing now, boy. I'm all the big ass head.
so long to come to me. Maybe you were waiting down for me to.
Dr. Matt said I'm 10, goddamn it, that's it.
Some kind of wonderful, some kind of magical woman. Like love's for real. I need to show you right now.
I can't stand y'all. Man, I love my brothers, but that's all I say. I love my brothers. Shout out to Truth the Dragon. Truth the Dragon said Trump was really good at drinking water with 2 hands. Yes, Truth the Dragon, that's what he was good at. Oh, man. That's right, Sis Dragon Daddy. What's going on, brother? Good morning to you. I transcend all numbers and digits, goddammit. I'm off the Richter scale, as they say. Make sure that y'all are here tomorrow night, man. Patreon party is going down tomorrow night. 9 p.m. It's going down. Make make sure that you have your face in the place. And if you are not a member of the Patreon already, patreon.com/likeitanout, patreon.com/likeitanout, patreon.com/the BPD show. Y'all make sure y'all go ahead and join and have y'all ass at the Patreon party, man. It's the first Patreon party of the new year. Why would you not be there? Come on, be there. Be your ass there. All right, cool. Shout out to Industrial Arts. Bubba and Rebecca, a pair of dimes. Hey, that's right. Sister is a dime over there.
Like It or Not with Benjamin Dixon starts now.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, people.
Good morning and welcome to Like It or Not, where we're free to tell the truth.
Not Ken who doesn't like it.
Because the thing, I don't know how much the audience heard during the break, but James, Dr. Carl Mack was laughing so hard we couldn't even get our production in the background together. We had to mute him because he was laughing so damn hard over one of these. What was the joke, man?
Oh, excuse me. Let me say it. I asked my wife if I'm the only one she's ever been with. Mm-hmm. She said yes. All the others was 9 and 10s.
I'm afraid I don't get it. I'm sorry.
Get it.
It went over my head.
Dr. Mack.
Maybe I had the wrong strain this morning. Listen. We'll get the joke. We'll get the joke later. Listen. We got to take care of some serious stuff here. Our brother Cliff Albright from Black Voters Matter. He's a friend of the show. He's on the front line of this. If there's someone getting arrested for voting rights, it's the organization. They are part of Black Voters Matter all around the country. Their bus has been seen pushing the movement to make sure Black votes are protected in this country. Brother Cliff Albright. I know we have some serious stuff to take care of, but and please forgive us for bringing you in also during the shenanigans. How are you this morning, brother?
It's all right, man. You know, nowadays we need some shenanigans every now and then.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because you know what's funny is my mother watches the show every now and then, and she texted me and she said, "You guys are doing a whole lot of laughing." She was like, "But it's not really a whole lot to laugh about right now." And I was like, "You're right," and that's exactly why we're going to laugh in the face of the absurdity. Let's talk about the absurdity, the one that happened last night, but it's been an ongoing process, right? We did not just get here to the place where voting rights in this country is on the ledge. It's on the precipice, and we're really already, I think we're already in the deep end. And it feels to me, and you help me understand this a little better, we have plenty of evidence. It feels to me that we're not getting the appropriate response from the people who have the power, who could do something about the affront on our voting rights.
Yeah, I mean, it's sure felt that way over the past year, right? We spent a lot of the past year trying to get, like you said, the folks that we gave power to, and that includes the White House, includes Democrats in Congress, particularly in the Senate. We spent a lot of time just trying to get them to be more aggressive, right? To deal with this as the existential crisis that it is. And so, I think a lot of time was wasted there. But then the last month we had this big flurry starting towards the end of December when they finally decided to shift from Build Back Better to focus on voting rights. And then you start to see more of the so-called moderate Democrats starting to come out. Some of whom, actually surprised me last night. I thought Angus King, who had been on the fence about the filibuster, was one of the strongest voices actually last night. So some of them started to come out a few weeks ago. So we could have been further along, right? If they had started on this throughout the year, if the White House, if Biden had made a speech sooner, if the Senate had done more stuff sooner. But be it as it may, we got to where we got last night, which was a critical night. And I want to be clear. Everything that we've done, like you said, all the arrests, being in the streets, everything that we've done, while we didn't get passage, I think it is worth noting, and this isn't just a moral victory or whatever, that debate last night was significant. We had not yet even been able to have a debate on these bills. And we would not have had a debate on these bills if months ago we had decided, well, it's not going to happen. We're going to ease up and we're just going to let them go through the process. It was activism that led, just like activism led to Biden giving the speech that he gave in Georgia, it was activism that led the Senate and Speaker Schumer, I mean, not Speaker, the Senate Majority Leader Schumer, to push it this far and to get these people on record. That means something.
I often think about that. It reminds me of when Joe Biden gave his acceptance speech the night that he finally accepted victory. It was a Saturday. It wasn't that Thursday. It wasn't the Tuesday night of the election. At that speech, he actually said in the record of his speech that white supremacy is I believe he said, existential threat to the United States of America. Now, I do feel the angst that most people are feeling this morning because, as you said, it's not a moral victory, but it is something to have it on the record, of this country, particularly in like Joe Biden's was just a speech, but on the Senate debate, that means it's going down on the record who's on the side of justice. Help the people to understand the significance of what happened last night.
Yeah, I mean, that means something to put people on the record, that they actually voted against voting rights, because when they block, we all know, over the past few months that they blocked even debating this voting rights legislation 3 times, right? We all know that, it makes it into the news cycle. But it gets lost, right, in the historical record, right? Most people aren't going to 20, 30 years from now may not remember that they voted to filibuster having a debate on these bills over the past few months. But they will remember that this debate and this vote took place, and that means something. Getting Manchin and Sinema on the record means something, right? Having even that exchange, the exchange that took place between Ossoff, who I've been critical of every now and then. That's right. But that debate between Senator Ossoff and Susan Collins, right, when she tried to clap back, but she missed the mark. She didn't know what she was talking about, right?
That's right.
And so Ossoff called her out. And in fact, what I would even like to see is, since she was so adamant talking about, I supported the 5-page extension of the Voting Rights Act. They might want to, there's some talk about them breaking these pieces down. They might want to bring that back up. Okay, let's do another 5-pager where we not just extend, but we restore. You could do that in 5 pages. In fact, truth be told, the version that they had filibustered of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act probably wasn't much more than that, right? But since you now are on the record saying that's what you supported, then let's game on, let's do it, right? And so having that debate and getting them on record, means something.
Yeah. Brother Mac, I want to get you in there. Before we do, real quick, DJ Exclusive, thank you for reminding me. Our sister, Rebecca Azor, is actually currently on the Hill Rising, and she's over there representing for the morning show, and she'll be joining us momentarily. I know she wanted to get in on some of this conversation about voting rights, but Brother Mac, let me yield the floor to you.
And Brother Albright, on behalf of a grateful people, thank you so much. And I know that Sister Latasha Brown, her and I roll deep. And so I just want to thank you all for what you're doing. But many times when I talk to members in our community, they find this whole thing so complex and convoluted. So I just want you to, and I certainly don't mean to be insulting to anybody, but let's just try to be as elementary as we can to let folks understand simplistically what's going on. So can you tell us what is the current makeup of the Senate, both Republican and Democrat? How many votes did we need in order to pass this Voting Rights Act? And then how does the filibuster play into all of this, and how Manchin and Sinema are such a roadblock to it? So those very basic fundamental questions, if you could just lay that out for us so that all of us can have just a very simple understanding of how important what happened last night was.
Right. No problem. So, the makeup of the Senate, the first part of your question, the makeup of the Senate is this, that there's 50 Democrats, and some of these terms don't really, because you got some Democrats that ain't really, they not standing for the things that we would think that they
Democrats in name only. Democrats in name.
Democrats in name only, right? And truth be told, it's really only 48 because two of those 50 aren't even technically Democrats. You got a couple independents, but that's a whole nother story. But you got 50 Democrats. And then you've got 50 Republicans, right? So what does that mean in a majority rule system? Well, it generally means, and most of us think what that means is that if they vote on something and if there's a tie, then what's the tiebreaker? The tiebreaker is that the vice president of the United States, whose sister Vice President Kamala Harris, would cast the deciding vote, right? And certainly there have been a couple of things, a couple of pieces of legislation where that has already happened. But the problem is to get to that 50, and this is the part that a lot of us don't understand, and people in other countries don't understand it. To make something happen in the Senate, you've often got to get 60 votes because of this thing that they call the filibuster. And so that's the problem. To even have a debate on certain things, you don't just have simple majority rule, right? You got to get 60 votes. And in this current makeup, there are not 10 Republicans that will vote for anything, pretty much, especially not voting rights, right? You couldn't find 10 Republicans to even vote on whether or not they would have a investigation into what happened on January 6th, right?
That's
so
right.
If you can't find 10 people to investigate an attack on their workspace,
That's right.
then you're not going to get 10 of them to look into or support voting rights. So that's the makeup that we're at, where we've got 50, but 50 is not enough because you got to get 60 in order to get past this procedural obstacle and this thing called the filibuster, which historically, and a couple of people pointed this out last night during the debate, historically, it has been used more to block civil rights legislation than it has been used on any other single issue. And that history goes back to the 1800s, right? Into the Civil Rights Acts of the 1870s. It might as well, the filibuster might as well have a big Negroes only sign above it, just like the water fountains, because that's the way it has historically been used. Has it been used on other stuff? Yeah, but never on any other single issue as much as it's used on civil rights legislation.
And so, my brother, and thank you so much. But again, as you stated, around the world, people are confused about the 60. So are we saying that in order for the Voting Rights Act to come up for vote on the floor, and thus you can get a 50-50 vote, and then the vice president casts the majority vote, are you saying that for it to even come up on the floor, you got to have 60 people to say, yes, let's bring it up for debate, or let's bring it up for a vote? Is it that simple?
That's the part.
It's pretty much that simple. The reason it's a little bit more complex is only because last night there was a debate, but they had to use this strange process that I won't even go into. It's called messages between the houses. They had to come up with this strange procedural process just so that they could get to the point that they were at last night, which was a debate. So that was a special situation, but generally what you just said is correct. You have to have 60 votes not just to pass the bills, to even discuss the bills, right. which in an institution that calls itself the world's most deliberative body, you have to have 60% or 60 votes just to even deliberate. And they blocked that. And the way that they blocked that isn't even the way that they used to do it, where you'd have to stand up and argue your case on why you're blocking it. The way that they do it now with this kind of secret filibuster or a pocket filibuster, you could be on a plane somewhere flying home saying, I'm a filibuster that voting rights thing. And so there's no process, there's no transparency, there's no accountability, there's no open discussion. All you got to do is say, I'm a filibuster. You don't have 60 votes, and then it just gets squashed without any kind of debate or discussion.
I want to bring in I just want to bring in Sister. She's on the screen. She brought herself in. Good morning, Rebecca.
And you muted though.
You're on mute, sis. You're on mute, sis. It is still the pandemic.
See, every time we got guests in the room, y'all want to act like it's crazy. But, y'all better be glad that Cliff is a cousin. So, he's family. He already know what's up. But good morning, beautiful black
man.
Good
morning.
Rebecca is actually not late this morning. Rebecca was just over at the Hill Rising, and we could talk about that as you see fit, Rebecca. But I just have to point out the fact of what Dwayne, you're going to have to say that again for me, brother. What did you just say?
I said, I bet you wasn't muted on Rising.
I bet you she was on time for right. Anyway, I digress.
Listen. Don't do that. Because, see, this is my show. I don't know if, everybody knows on this show right now, but this is my show. I come in when I need to be here. Okay?
My own show. I relate to your own show.
Tell them, sis.
Other folks' houses, you know how it is. You got to make sure you're together. And because I am the only black woman that was in that segment, you got to let them know what's up. I'm not going to go over there looking crazy, and I would never disrespect my show, but I know when I'm not here, I got all of you guys to hold it down for me. But when you pulling up to something new and they all, clear and they all are men, and I'm pulling up as a black woman, the first thing they said was, "Wow, beautiful nails. Wow, that's really cool."
Oh, come on.
Oh, wow, Rebecca, really?
Okay, we're going to have to unpack that in a minute. But we are. 16 dozen videos.
It was fun, though. It was fun.
That we want to, and Cliff, you let us know how much time you have, because our producer said that you can hang. I don't know if that's still the case this morning, but we got a lot of video evidence to what everything that you're saying. And I wanted to, just before we move, Brother Mac, I want to get you back in there. And the first clip I want us to see is the one of your co-founder, Latasha Brown, where she is speaking very clearly about the stakes here. But before we go to that clip, Brother Mac, you were getting in there.
Yeah. And so, Brother Albright, again, so part of the criticism that the Democrats, and in particular the Biden administration, is having is that not within their own party can they come to a consensus. And so there are two senators, Manchin and Sinema, who are holding out. And so can you speak to us about what it is, why it is that they can't get on board with the idea of passing a Voting Rights Act in which they understand that this country is attempting to suppress the minority, in particular the black vote. So what is it about Manchin and Sinema's position that appears to be such a headache for not only the administration, but the Democratic Party, and in particular getting this Voting Rights Act passed?
Yeah, that's a hard one to answer because, there's no sanity to either one of their positions. With Manchin, it's this at least on the face of it, this thing he has for maintaining the Senate, and really both of them talk about, if we do this, if we get rid of the filibuster, then that'll open up the door for Mitch McConnell and the Republicans to come in and do the same thing. But in saying that, what they failed to realize is he's already done that. Mitch McConnell has already demonstrated that he'll blow up the filibuster. Guess what? That's how Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices.
That's exactly right.
There's no reason to think that by them being reasonable that they're somehow going to be saving the institution of the Senate. So that's part of the contradiction and the hypocrisy. With Manchin, there's also this whole thing that he has about, we've never done this and we've always had the filibuster like that. It's a lie. It's just I can't even say that he's just inaccurate. He's really just lying because he knows better, right? He knows that this filibuster has not always existed. He knows that it's not in the Constitution. He knows that it's been modified literally over 100 times, 160 times just within the past 40 or 50 years. He knows all of this, but he's telling these lies as if this is so sacrosanct, as if we're supposed to sacrifice, I said this the other day on Martin Luther King Day, as if we're supposed to sacrifice our voting rights on the altar and the golden calf of the filibuster. We're not doing that, and so it's hard to, and with Sinema, she is so isolated even from her own constituents in Arizona who shout out to Arizona. They have been clowning out there in terms of putting pressure on her, but she hasn't even had a town hall in 4 years that she's been in office, right? So she doesn't even talk to her own people in Arizona. You can't blame it on the people of Arizona or on the state being so conservative, because guess what? Her colleague, who's up for election this year, also from Arizona, he came out in support of modifying the filibuster and in support of voting rights. And so their positions make no sense other than they got some people lining their pockets, because we know that they have both been raising funds off of this. But even that's a little confusing because, I get it on the Build Back Better thing. They got big pharma, they got energy interests that are funding them because there's financial stakes in terms of Build Back Better, right? You can see the alignment in terms of why their donors are leading them to fight against Build Back Better. It's a little bit less clear on voting rights, right? Which isn't fundamentally an economic issue, although part of one of the acts that was merged, the Freedom to Vote Act, does include some campaign finance reform pieces to it, which is part of the reason why places like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and some other donors and business interests do have an interest. So it's not just the concept of democracy, it's also about the impact of big money and dark money in this democracy. And that might be the reason why their donors are having them to take these idiotic, insane positions that they're taking on voting rights.
And Queen, can I ask just one last question? I'm so sorry, but if I could just ask one last question. So Brother Albright, thank you so much for clearing. I mean, your insight is impeccable. And so here's the other thing, my last question. With the voting rights, I know a lot of times these bills won't come up because they have these sub-bills as a part of them. Is the Voting Rights Act a standalone bill where that's all that's in there that should cause, basically you saying if you vote against this, you are absolutely voting for voter suppression? So are there other underlying sub-bills a part of it, or is it standalone?
No, this is standalone. This is just voting rights. Now, it includes, because you got the voter access parts of voting rights, making Election Day a national holiday, having guaranteed number of early vote days, all that stuff. You've got that dark money, campaign finance, which they try to argue makes this be like a dirty bill, kind of like what you're saying, right? But all of that is a part of voting rights. Gerrymandering is in the Freedom to Vote Act, but that's a part of voting rights. If we're not clear about that, just look at places like in fact in Florida, where unheard of, Governor DeSantis just tried to introduce his own maps. He's not even in the legislature, but he's trying to introduce some maps. And what do those maps do? They literally cut black and brown representation in half. Same thing that they did in Texas, same thing that they're doing in a whole bunch of other states. So gerrymandering is a voting rights issue, and it's racial justice issue. So everything in these acts deals with voter suppression. It is a clean voting rights, voter suppression, extending the Voting Rights Act of 1965, extending and re-strengthening the Voting Rights Act to put back in what the Supreme Court took away. So this ain't no pork belly or whatever, all that, ain't none of that stuff up in these bills. This is all about our voting rights and representation.
Wow. And that's exactly what I was going to get to. A lot of these conversations are centered around, yes, the filibuster, it's taking away voting rights, but who exactly? Okay, when we're going to talk about this, we need to talk about who exactly it is affecting and why it's so important that it affects the black vote. This is what we got to talk about. What communities is it disrupting? And why is it that all these little things that are being done affects the black community the most? And I think that's where people want to start, wavering when it comes to that conversation, the bipartisan view on it. People who are saying that they are for voting rights, but they don't want to talk about that part of it. That's a huge part of it, and I think when we look at people like Kirsten Sinema and everyone else who are saying that they're for the people and for voting rights, when you are behind these kind of things, this is telling me that this is drenched in something that is racially charged. And it lets me know that just because, you're on the right side of things or the left side of things doesn't mean that, you're for the people that you're supposed to be protecting, the people that you're supposed to be leading. So I think that's a part of the conversation that a lot of Democrats don't want to really tap into, is the fact that this is a racially charged situation. This is affecting voting rights, but the people it's affecting the most look like everybody on the screen.
That's right.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're exactly right, Rebecca. You see, that's why it's Rebecca's show. You see, you're exactly right, Rebecca, because and some, even last night, some of the Democrats didn't touch on that racial piece of it, right? But some of them did, like I said, some of them pointed out the racial history of filibuster. Others pointed out the racial impact of these attacks. We got to keep in mind, even when we talk about trying to overturn the election in January 6th, what exactly were they trying to overturn, right? They were trying to overturn specific states. That's what that was about. And what were those states? It was places like Georgia because they felt like the vote in Atlanta wasn't legitimate. It was places like Michigan because they felt like the vote in Detroit wasn't legitimate. It was places like Pennsylvania because they thought that the votes from folks in Philadelphia weren't legitimate. Are we seeing the pattern here? So really what they were trying to do was to overturn black votes. But it led to was an insurrection that was attacking the entire democratic process. And that's the part, and Reverend Barber has been, really trying to make sure that people understand this. It is a race issue. All of it, going back even to the 65 Act, was about racism and about disenfranchising black folks. And it's the same today, but what it creates is a system where your entire democracy is at stake. And so what do you find? You find an entire election being overthrown. You see attacks on like in Florida where they're attacking vote by mail. Up until last year, it was Republicans that used to win by vote by mail. And so, but then we came out in big numbers. And so now they're trying to get rid of a mechanism that everybody benefits from. I use Mississippi as an example. Mississippi, a lot of people don't know this, just last year or year before last year, voted by popular vote for medical marijuana in Mississippi, right?
I did not know that.
Bible Belt.
But the Republicans... I know you like that, man. But the Republicans were so bad about it that what did they do? They challenged, check this out, they challenged their entire ballot initiative process. And then the court threw away the entire process. So now the state of Mississippi has no process for popular ballot initiative. That's the extent so that's an attack on the entire democracy in that state that's directly aimed at. It's structural. So all of the stuff that they targeted black folks, and we got to be real clear, it is rooted in Jim Crow, racism, white supremacy. We are targets. They target us with surgical precision. They target us. In North and South Dakota, they targeted our indigenous brothers and sisters. I want to leave them out, right? In Texas, they targeted our Latinx brothers and sisters, right?
Yes.
It's rooted in racism, but all of them are going to suffer when they let this so-called democracy, because it ain't never been perfect. In fact, what we're seeing today is really just a reflection of the original sin. The original cracks in this democracy ain't never go away. And so what we're seeing today is just a reflection of that you only wanted to let white men with money, men, money, and property, that you only wanted them to vote. And so we saw a Senate last night which still, with some minor changes, right, but still reflects that same population, white men, Christian with money, right? And so it's the original sin and the original fault lines in this democracy, rooted in racism, that is still reflecting itself today. We can't lose sight of that, but be clear, this entire democracy will crumble, just like you are not exempt from COVID, even though a lot of the response was rooted in racism, because they said, it's disproportionately hurting black folks. This ain't a problem, right? But then what do? You mess around and then you create a situation where it's affecting red states and white communities that they thought were somehow going to be exempt. So everything that they target at us winds up affecting every structure. Your racism in education has made your entire education system weak. Your racism in employment has made your entire employment and wages and income situation weak. Your racism in healthcare has made your entire health system. It's the 1619 Project, right? Everything that you targeted us is going to impact this entire system. And that's what we're seeing with this so-called democracy. It's rooted in racism and white supremacy.
Yes, it is.
So Brother Albright, would you say that, in recent elections, arguably, not arguably, but factually speaking, the highest voter turnout was 2008 with the election of President Obama. And so ultimately now we get the sacred position of having a man of color in the Oval Office. Do you think that was, and I know that historically it's been going on, but do you think that the efforts around voter suppression really ramped up when they saw that one incident? And again, I think likewise in the last election when Georgia flipped, if you could comment to both of those.
No, definitely. I mean, even as, you know, a lot of people have been pointing out that these 16 Republicans that voted for the Voting Rights Act in 2006, but now they don't believe in voting rights. What could have changed? What happened soon after 2006 that could have made them all of a sudden be like, "Oh, this voting thing"?
Can I do something real quick as a point of privilege for the show? Hey Google, what happened today in Black history?
On January 20th, 2009, Barack Hussein Obama II was sworn in as the 44th President of the United States. After graduating from Columbia University, he went on to Harvard Law School, where he became the first Black president of the Harvard Law Review. Before entering politics, Obama was mentored by Michelle Robinson at the law firm Sidley Austin. The two would later marry. Obama worked as a civil rights attorney and also taught constitutional law at the University of Chicago Law School. He sought the presidency after serving as both an Illinois state senator and a United States senator. Adapted from Black Heritage Day 4 calendar by author, lecturer, and civil rights activist Dr. Karl Mack.
I love it when a plan comes
Come
together.
on, Dr. Karl Mack.
Come on, Dr. Karl Mack. You know what I'm saying?
Karl Mack.
The plan did come together. It was very good. I was like, did y'all rehearse this? Because it was too on point.
It was smooth.
It was perfect.
We had the B-roll
impromptu
ready.
as
I
hell.
said, excuse me. Okay.
It was. Hey, full transparency. Dr. Mack set that up. He gave me the alley-oop, and I saw it.
That was good.
It was great. It was great. It was great.
I love it with a play. But now, dovetailing back to the conversation, because we're professional here, is that not when these fools lost their damn minds?
That is exactly. In fact, we could take it even further, right? Because what then happened, because that's where the Tea Party came from, right? And there's a direct line from the Tea Party to the insurrectionists. Be clear about that. But it's not just that; it's even enshrined in the Supreme Court Shelby decision, which weakened the Voting Rights Act. Because as Chief Justice Roberts would say, you know, where he made the argument, we need to be clear, Chief Justice Roberts has been trying to get rid of the Voting Rights Act ever since the early 80s when Lonnie Guinier kicked his butt and got the Voting Rights, it was part of the team that got the Voting Rights Act extended then in a way that he didn't want to see it happen. So this has been a long vendetta that he's had against voting rights. But in the Shelby decision, part of what Roberts basically says is, you know, we don't still need all these provisions because guess what? You know, we got a Black president, right? That was 2013. And so in more ways than one, the election of Barack Obama, President Obama, like you said, made them lose their minds, made them no longer want to support voting rights to whatever extent they ever supported voting rights, became part of the Supreme Court's decision, which then in turn is part of what has opened up the floodgates to, you know, voter ID and everything else that we've seen over the past 8 years. And then they made it worse last year with the Brownovich Supreme Court decision, which further weakened the Voting Rights Act. So all of this has its roots.
You was an informed behind. I feel like the scene from Harlem Nights, man. Like, Quick, you was a smooth. You got these facts. Like you, and it's important though. Here's why it's important: because if we don't understand the precise machinations of the games they're playing up there, we don't stand a chance in fighting back against it.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you know. As Ben said, I mean, you're very informed, but specifically when it comes to voting rights, this is the thing. There are a lot of people who look like us who don't understand their rights when it comes to voting. They don't know what it looks like when their rights are being taken from them. So, you know, having you, you know, break it down to us, it's simple things like, you know, address changes or where your address is located. You know, they'll try to step in and say that your vote isn't going to count because this is where you're located or whatever the case may be. So this is why it's very important for us to be educated or know what our local officials, you know, state officials are doing when it comes to voting rights. Because you may not know that they are low-key planning and doing things to make sure that when it comes time to vote, your vote will not count. They're going to make sure that they put things in place to make sure that your vote doesn't count. So thank you so much, Cliff Albright. Thank you so much for educating us on this.
Yes.
And it's not only if I might add, that former President Barack Obama, him just being elected president. Okay, it wasn't only that. It was when he wore that tan suit. Then people lost all of the little hairs they had,
everything,
on their head, and they
ain't know how to respond.
Why would we? They were literally using that and saying the fact that he is so disrespectful enough to wear a tan suit lets us know that our voting rights don't matter. They were using this as rhetoric.
Just to pose that to the moron that just left office. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brother Cliff.
And Queen, you hit on a point that I also, Brother Albright, if you could please, just in its very simplistic explanation, describe to us, because Queen, you said they do these things. So, Brother Albright, just tell us some of the things that they're looking at doing.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Whatever those simple things are, that these tricks that we should be on the lookout for.
That's
tricks.
Good. Yeah. Oh God, how much time do we have left of this show? So
11 minutes. Take it.
Run it.
So Rebecca mentioned a couple of them, right? It's things like closing polling places, moving polling places, photo ID restrictions, both for use in person as well as use of ID for vote by mail, sometimes even combining ID with these other requirements of you got to have a notary, you got to have 2 signatures, like all of these things that they know people don't readily have available. It's the voter purges. That's a huge thing, right? That how all these states, under the guise of saying, oh, we're just maintaining the list and making sure that the list is accurate, but they wind up purging folks who should not be purged. And guess what? It's always disproportionately Black folks, right? It's things even like I was talking about our indigenous brothers and sisters. It's the address requirements where for folks that live in indigenous communities where they know that they don't have the traditional mailing systems, and so that's something that they use to get rid of their communities, right? Wow. It's we talked about it's drop boxes, right? We're in a lawsuit against Florida right now where they are saying that, well, we're going to have drop boxes, but guess what? We're going to change it from the way that we did it last year, which even the crazy man DeSantis said was the gold standards. We didn't have any problems with our election, but then they come out with their voter suppression bill where part of what they're doing is saying that we're going to have drop boxes being monitored, right, by workers, by employees. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean sheriff deputies? Does that mean, these elected officials that a lot of times, sometimes are viewed as hostile folks are? Sometimes part of the reason our folks use drop boxes is because we don't want to have to walk into the courthouse or wherever and cast that vote because we know that people are watching. But now you're going to have even the drop boxes being monitored. And oh, by the way, you can only use them during certain hours, which defeats the purpose of having a drop box, right? If I could get there from 9 to 5, then I probably wouldn't even need the drop box.
That's
right. But you got these. You got these restrictions on drop. In fact, in Georgia, which already passed its voter suppression bill last year, now they're introducing a new bill. That's how long we've been in this fight. We're going through a second wave of voter suppression in these states. And part of what they're doing after they restricted drop boxes last year, restricted the number and the locations and the hours. This year, they said, you know what, that wasn't enough. Let's just get rid of the drop boxes altogether. That's what they're trying to do here in Georgia. It's provisions that include things like, there's a lot that's made out of the line warming, not being able to give out food and water, which is ridiculous. Like, so you're going to impose a system which creates 5-hour, 6-hour, 7-hour lines in our communities, not everywhere, but in our communities. And then when we try to support people to make it easier for them to stay online, you're going to criminalize giving out food and water. That's a feature that is in many of these bills. And then one of the biggest features that's in these bills is the whole thing, that's related to election subversion. All of these things that are related to the local boards of elections in Georgia, that they took power away from the Secretary of State, gave it to the Republican legislature so that they can take over a local board of election, which they are now trying to do in Fulton County. You don't have to take over every county board. If you just take over Fulton County, guess what? what Trump asked the Secretary of State to do, which was go find me 11,000 votes, this would give them the power to do that, right?
Right.
And so we're seeing that feature in some of these bills in several states.
And how black is Fulton County, y'all? Everybody from Fulton, everybody who ever even been through Fulton County know that Fulton County is the blackest part of Atlanta, Georgia. Right. So they know exactly.
I don't know about that, brother man.
South Fulton.
South Fulton.
I want to point out
South Fulton.
The city of South Fulton. The city of South Fulton is the blackest city in America. Yes, right. Mm-hmm. But in terms of targeting on the vote, when they targeted with precision, they targeted Fulton County as a whole so that they can get the votes that they needed. And they knew if they can skim Fulton County because of how black it is, they can overcome that hurdle of how much Donald Trump lost by in the last election.
That's right. And speaking of that, Brother Albright, speaking of that, based on what you all have done, did you see any proof of the allegations that Trump made about votes not being counted, votes coming up, all of the lies, the big lie? Did you all see any evidence, any proof of that? Because again, I've always stated that if there is an absolute undeniable flaw in the system, I clearly understand the need to change to make that process more with further integrity. So did you see a lack of integrity that coincided or agreed with, quote unquote, the big lie?
Let me tell you this. The only evidence I've seen of the fraud that they were talking about with the big lie is the evidence that we have repeatedly. The only folks that have been found doing any kind of fraud have been Trump voters. In fact, fool, the lieutenant governor in Texas, as the issue of a bounty, the offer of reward, if they could go out and find all this rampant voter fraud in Pennsylvania, and the only thing they found in Pennsylvania was two Trump voters that tried to vote multiple times. And so, no, this fraud doesn't exist. And there's and that's not just me talking. We all know that they had dozens of cases, frivolous cases that they tried to file, and they weren't able to win not a single one. Not even a win. They weren't even, in some cases, able to get past summary judgment. And some of these judges were Trump judges that wouldn't side for him. So it doesn't exist. It's nothing but a big lie. But what we know is that if you say the lie often enough and loud enough, that people will believe it, especially when those people were predisposed to believe that there's something going on with these black folks that are winning these elections and coming out in such large numbers. That's how you get to a point where you got, what is it, like 70% of Republicans, I think the number is, don't believe that Biden won the election. That's a result of them saying the big lie loud over and often, combined with the already existing white supremacy in the people that are believing the lie.
We have about 4 minutes before the end of the segment. We want to make sure anyone who's a patron, patreon.com/like it or not, patreon.com/the BPD show. We're going to take it to the after party where there's so much more about this that we're going to discuss. And we also have there's a list of things to discuss. Brother Mac, get in there real quick. And as we get ready to get out of here.
Yeah, Brother Albright, one of the things Ben and I were talking about is when they had this special investigation to take place to look at the voting in Arizona. Tell us what ultimately, because supposedly they had an expert to come in and they were going to count the ballots and do all this stuff, and they had big money behind it. What was the end result of all of that?
Well, the end result is the expert, and it wasn't an expert. It was some fly-by-night company, cyber ninjas. You put the fate of democracy in the hands of cyber ninjas. And so they came in and did this fraud.
That's the name of them?
Twitter fingers.
That's the name of the company. No, that's real talk.
Oh,
that's the name of the company.
That is the name. That is the name.
Yes, no.
How you call them Twitter
That's
fingers?
the name of the company.
My God.
That's the real story. So
Frontline doctors. Oh my God, this is ridiculous. Please finish telling us this is
you see how ridiculous it is?
Wow.
That's how ridiculous it is. And so they come in and find nothing. They wasted all this time, wasted all this money, found nothing. In fact, they did find something. They actually found that Biden had more votes than what they thought that was reported. And so But not only that, now Cyber Ninjas is now I think they're being sued or investigated. Right. And so, but it's not just Arizona. They've done these fraudulent audits, these fraudits in several other states where, again, even the Republican officials that asked for the audits have had to come back and say nothing was found. Nothing was found. In several states, that's happened. Arizona was the biggest and the most ridiculous of them, but that's happened in several states. There has been no evidence found of any fraud, no evidence found at the count, no evidence found that what Kanye West publicist tried to say, where she harassed. I know y'all know about that. Where she harassed the election worker. Yeah, and so all of this is nothing but a big lie, but it's a big lie that has implications, because then you see that lie being supported in the United States Senate. You saw it being supported. Let's not forget, in addition to the insurrection on January 6th, that you had 147, 100 and something Republicans that even after the insurrection still voted to overturn the election, including 6 or so members of the Senate. The same Senate that was having this debate. So the big lie is in the U.S. Senate, where they are voting and making policy or not making policy based on the big lie. You got people running for office, including in Arizona, but in other states, I think Trump has endorsed like 160 something folks. Some of them are running for governorships. Some of them are running for Secretary of State. And their platform is that they would not have certified the last election. They are literally running on an insurrectionist platform. This is not a joke.
And
but the good news is, the good news is we got the power.
We got the power.
And speaking of the insurrection, think about what happened in the Supreme Court, that there was an 8-1 vote to say no, turn over Trump's record. And there was one vote that said no. And do you care to share with us who that one vote was?
Y'all know who it is, Uncle Clarence.
Uncle Clarence.
My God. Listen, Rebecca, go ahead, Rebecca. You brought that man up.
Even the 3 people that Trump appointed, including the stolen seat that Mitch McConnell made happen because he stole a seat, but even they voted against. Right. Even they voted against Trump, but Clarence Thomas somehow finds the strength and wisdom to side with the twice impeached former occupant of the White House.
Man, that's madness. That is madness.
And so, Brother Albright, I think what all of this clearly says to us is...
Brother Mac, I got to hold it there only because we're out of time.
I know, it's getting good.
It's so proud of you, bro. Thank you so much.
Brother, and Brother Cliff, you do know if you don't hit the abort button, we will hold you here at least for another half hour because we're getting ready to go to the after party. Rebecca, and I know because I'm not going to get in trouble on account of Brother Mac.
I don't know if Cliff
Rebecca,
wants to
where are we going in the show right now? Because
Listen,
this is your show, right? No,
this is my show. But I do love how this is a great conversation. This is what I don't like. I don't like that. But we're going to get to that after our guest is gone. Thank you, Cliff Albright. We're going to have you again because, like I said, this conversation can go on for days and days and days, and we're all educated on it. But this is the conversation that we need to be having, especially now. Yeah. So be prepared for that phone call, that email.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, whenever y'all call, I'm there for y'all. And just, I want to say this real quick because I've been saying it all week, and I'm still saying it in spite of what happened last night. Let us not grow weary, for in due season we shall reap. If we faint not. I don't care what happened last night. This battle is not over. This battle ain't over till we say it's over. Game on.
That's
Let's
right.
Go.
Let's go.
Yes, sir.
Hey,
yes, sir.
DJ Exclusive. Take us out on that note. We'll see everybody at the after party.
All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much again for joining us this morning. If you are not coming to the after party, then where the hell are you going to? Patreon.com/LikeItOrNot. Patreon.com/The BPD Show, man. Tomorrow night, it's going down. Patron party, 9 p.m. Have your face in the place. Love y'all, mean it. And if you're not coming to the after party, we will see you tomorrow. And your affirmation for today is My world changes with my mindset and thoughts. My world changes with my mindset and thoughts. Y'all gonna be great. Love y'all, mean it. We will see y'all tomorrow. If we don't see you at the after party right now, deuces.
I'd rather be with. Baby, I won't let you down. I got it. I know you need it. Love is it when you're around.
Shout out, Bar Sharice. Hey, Mara.
You believe it. Cause I don't wanna lose you. I hope you feel that way too. No, I don't wanna lose you. Baby, don't go.
Dog Man, what's going on, Barbara Rice?
When I get you back, oh yeah.
David, you already know what I'm gonna say. Drop that link when you can, David.
When I get you back, oh yeah.
Lauren, love you too, lady.
When I get you back, oh yeah. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah. Cause I don't wanna lose you. I hope you feel that way too. No, I don't wanna lose you. Baby, don't go. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah. I promise you'll
Laverne Rebel Jules Wells too. Thank you so much.
When it comes to you and me,
Hollywood deuces.
There's